Through the Noise with your host, Ernesto Glucksmann.
Okay, Lisa, we're rolling. Thank you for stopping by. Lisa Conway, you're the VP of Sustainability for the Americas at Interface.
That's right.
And I'm super excited to talk to you guys. It's weird for me to say that because you like the name Interface, I was expecting like audio, technology, something. But really, it's about flooring materials. It's about carpeting. It's about those products. And, I'm sure you get some jokes here and there. How can we get excited by that? And I can tell you one thing, you guys, as a publicly traded company and the story of it,
Yep.
really the part that's amazing. So let me give you the street cred a little bit here. You and your team, work on the company's mission in reversing global warming through this climate take back initiative. You're running a lot of the sustainability, how you source it, how you categorize it, how you do all kinds of things. You're on several boards. There's all kinds of complexity associated with carbon calculation, carbon capture. So take it away, Lisa. Let's just start with Interface. Give us like your personal overview of
Sure.
what you guys do.
Yeah, and you're totally touching on it because if I'm at a dinner party and I don't want to talk to the person, I say that I work in flooring.
Yeah.
And
that's awesome.
If I do want to talk to them more, then I say that our company is reversing global warming. And they're like, wait, what?
That's
so
awesome.
I have both options available to me.
That's such
yeah.
Yeah. I gotta come up with my get out of conversation.
Yeah. You need the opportunity to get out if you see that person coming across the room and you're like, oh no, tell them you work in flooring.
So Interface,
Interface,
been around for a long time, 1994, even earlier than that, right?
73 is when we started. 94 is when we really got on the environmental journey. So yeah, taking us all the way back. So we're a worldwide commercial flooring manufacturer. We started in making just carpet tile, and the name Interface really came from how it had to do with flat wire cabling and some technology that would go through the floor. And we used to sell our product backing side up because it was a very utilitarian type of sale.
Backing side up, the back side of the product,
yeah.
where you're just like, I'm getting floors, we're building a big building, I just need something here.
And it was modular, and you could pick up a piece because if you had a problem with something that was under the floor for the technology that was running under the floor, then you could do that. So it's just very necessary. It was a very utilitarian type of sale that we would have with the customer, and they would buy it for that purpose. And then as we went on, it really mattered what the product looked like from the fuzzy side up, we call it. So what it looks like, when you think about carpet in your home, you're purchasing it based on what it would look like from the top, not necessarily from the bottom. So yeah, we've been around a long time. We actually brought that concept of carpet tile to the US because it started in Europe. And we've expanded since then into 3 categories. So we have carpet tile still, we have what's called luxury vinyl tile. So if you think of the flooring that looks like wood but isn't, we have that stuff. And then we have rubber flooring, which is a very different type of product, really meant for places like healthcare, transportation. So if you think of like subway cars, labs,
sound absorbing, somewhat soft, but
sound
still
absorbing,
you can clean and tough.
You can clean, yep, right. You can drop most chemicals on it, things like that. So again, kind of a very utilitarian sale, and we make it look as good as we possibly can while still delivering those performance benefits. So all of that's commercial, with the exception of our online brand, which is called Floor, FLOR. So that's our consumer business. And people can actually put the stuff in their homes, mostly area rugs, but some wall to wall, but still in those squares that you can install yourself.
I have small kids, and they spill a lot.
Perfect for that.
We're constantly debating, should we buy the big area rug now or wait till maybe we should get some tiled ones so I could just lift the pieces that, that
exactly. Yeah, you can commit now. It's not as much of a commitment.
I am
Exactly.
definitely going to check that out. So
Yep.
just to jump ahead to 94,
Yeah.
one of your founders, what was his name? I'm
Ray
sorry.
Anderson.
Ray
Yeah.
Anderson. There's a beautiful YouTube video of an interview of him that I caught,
Yeah.
and he described reading, I forgot the book, he mentioned it, but
Well, he wrote Mid-Course Correction. He read The Ecology of Commerce by Paul Hawken.
perfect.
Yep.
Save me when I'm stumbling around trying to
Yeah.
come up with that.
No, you're
Yes.
good.
So
You
he
went in the
found that-
YouTube hole. There's like a YouTube hole of Ray Anderson that you could spend weeks on end
That's what I
seeing his
do.
speeches.
It's
Yeah.
perfect. But he mentioned like a pivotal point of like a feeling like a spear in his chest moment. I'll call it the oh shit moment.
Exactly.
You know, the what are we really doing here? What are we not, you know, paying attention? This is after many years of running a successful business, growing it and expanding, and suddenly having that thought of, and this is in 94, which I was in high school, just out of high school. That was a long time ago.
Yep.
And what happened? How do you describe or characterize what happened after that moment, after your founder was like, wait a minute, what's going on?
Yeah, so Ray was a super competitive guy, and one of the things that really bothered him was we were starting to get questions from customers, which were, "What are you doing for the environment?" And that question really bothered him because it was only a few people asking at the time. You know, we would today call them tree huggers, but he started to get this kind of sinking feeling in his stomach that there's something that he just didn't fully grasp about the impact that we were having on the environment. And so he started to look into that. And a book landed on his desk called The Ecology of Commerce by Paul Hawken. And when he read that, that's when he had what he calls his spear in the chest moment. You know, we'd kind of call it that our stomach started sinking. You'd call it the oh shit moment in your own words. I can get in trouble for using those words at work, but you said it first, so I'm just repeating.
You're okay on my show.
And I'm from Philly, so that works for me. But he really started to grasp the incredible negative impact that business, not just our business, but business has on the environment. And when he did that, you know, he started to question all of the things that he thought before. So things like, you know, I never really thought about where my raw materials were coming from. I just wanted to make sure that they kept coming, right? That's kind of business. It's like, I just need to make sure that I always have enough to create whatever widget I'm creating. And he started to think differently after reading that book. And he had a lot of courage, I think, to set us on a mission that even he didn't fully understand how we were going to reach at the time. So in 94, he started to get some of these put together, this Eco Dream Team. Paul Hawken, the author of that book, was one of them, to say, what should we be doing? And I think I still look back and think it's so cool that he was willing to set a mission called Mission Zero, which was our promise to eliminate any negative impact we had on the environment by the year 2020. So, you know, he gave himself 26 years, which is a lot of years, but it's also, he had a goal of zero. And I think that is just so powerful because companies often think in terms of, well, let's do like a 3% reduction year over year. And usually you kind of know that you can achieve that before you set that goal.
Sure.
That's kind of this game that businesses play.
Smart, right?
Yeah.
Specific, measurable,
Yeah.
achievable.
Achievable. Let's put it out there if we know we can declare success.
Right.
And we really didn't know back then. So we started doing the work of just figuring out, like, what are some initial steps? What's the low hanging fruit? And I think that has always given us a chance to think differently and think in terms of, I'm not thinking in terms of a 3% reduction. I'm thinking in terms of getting to zero. And that makes people think and act differently.
And so how can you give us a sense during that journey? I mean, you've been there for quite some time too with the company, and
Yep.
then you've moved into this role.
Yeah.
Can you give us a sense of like when you started working with them, what were you guys doing in that direction? And then what's happened since now that you're in this position?
Yeah. So I joined 14 years ago, and not because of sustainability. I actually joined as a salesperson in Philadelphia. It's a very not sexy story that they paid me more than I was making, at my job before when I was working somewhere else. And it wasn't until I got here that I was like, okay, I'm here. I should do my homework. Our founder wrote a book. It was called Mid-Course Correction. And I read that, and I had my own kind of, I hate to call it a spear in the chest moment, but what was really cool for me is that I realized that I was doing more than selling, right? Anyone can kind of sell things. Well, not anyone, it's actually very hard. But in order to stay in a sales role and feel like you're not just slinging, we would call it slinging rug back in the day, it it meant so much more. I started to really understand how much of an impact it could have if I sold my product instead of a competitor's product. And that really gave me a more holistic reason for being here. And I pretty quickly turned into an activist. There's an organization called 350.org. Super nerdy moment here, but 350 is the safe parts per million upper limit of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. We're currently over 410. So I had Ray, I had this moment. He was like my eco hero, but he was also, the founder of my company. But I kind of looked at him like, oh my gosh, would he come to Philadelphia? And had him here. And just over time, I've had a few roles at the company. And I laugh now and kind of joke that I was loud enough and passionate enough to land a full-time sustainability role at this company. So it's a dream job for me at a dream company. I can't imagine being anywhere else. And as we've kind of fast forwarded to our current mission, so Ray passed away a decade ago. We kind of had our moment of not really knowing like who we were going to be without him. And we decided to set the next mission for the company. And that was really spearheaded by our CSO, Aaron Mizan, and our CEO at the time, with the help of Paul Hawken. Once again, Paul Hawken has kind of never left our side throughout all of this. And we really wanted to see what is it that the world needs most now, and what are we most uniquely positioned to provide? And that really was global warming. We had done the reduction work over time of our own carbon footprint. We're a small company. We're 4,000 people. We are global. We manufacture we have 7 manufacturing sites around the world, from Australia to Europe and Asia, and here in the US. And we have this really amazing power of influence, even though we're not that big ourselves. So part of my team's job, the large part of it, is to really scale this idea of reversing global warming, not just mitigating climate change, but actually going towards reversal outside of Interface. So how can we bring others of scale along with us and be that catalyst for change? So that's what we work on every day, and it's awesome.
So, and just to get the next 20-year goal, you're trying to achieve negative consumption.
So we want to be a carbon negative enterprise by 2040.
Okay. So I can tell you 1994, being carbon neutral definitely was not it just was not in the general discussions. Now it seems that there's definitely a lot of people, a lot of companies making those public commitments to get there. But you're on like level 2 of this. You're on the next level of trying to be, if I buy from you, there's going to be more carbon taken out of the manufacturing process in general than if I bought with some other perhaps carbon neutral now competitor that's trying to get to where you guys are, right?
Right. Right. And a lot of the goals that are shared now around carbon neutrality include the purchase of offsets. So you've probably heard that term. But basically making sure that if I at Interface can't reduce my carbon footprint enough, then I can purchase offsets which allow it to be reduced elsewhere through a myriad of different projects, anything from planting trees to changing cook stoves from dirty fuels to clean fuels, and lots of other types of offset projects. So the great, I think, benefit that we have from doing this work for a really long time is that we don't have to buy many of those offsets because we've done the work to reduce our carbon footprint over time. So we really, our goal in 2040 is to get to be a carbon negative enterprise. We'd love to do it without offsets. We're not committing to that yet. But we are taking responsibility for both our own operations and manufacturing and also our supply chain, which is kind of that level 2 that you're touching on. Level 2 and the largest part of any company's carbon impact is often in its supply chain.
It's sourcing of the materials to begin with, right? There's a lot that can be done. If I'm just a designer and I contract the manufacturing process and the supplies, then I can make my design offices carbon neutral, call it a day, but that doesn't really account for what we're producing, packaging, then selling.
All of the stuff. So in our personal lives, as an example, for people to really easily wrap their head around, it is about the energy that you use at home and, ideally using renewable energy and things like that. But the largest impact that we have is through all of the stuff that we buy. Take all of that back. And we're starting to see some companies like Just Salad and Allbirds take responsibility for those things that we buy and share the carbon footprint of those things. We just need that carbon labeling to be more ubiquitous, to be in everything that we buy on our personal lives and also our professional lives. So for us, we work with, as you said, designers and some of these owners, the large tech customers, hospitals, universities, all of them, they have such power in what they buy because they buy so much stuff. It dwarfs what we buy personally. So what we're working with those types of customers on is thinking about the carbon footprint, and they think about it, but it can be hard to measure. In the built environment space where we are, there are calculators and tools where you can actually know the carbon footprint of that stuff, all of that stuff that is procured, and thinking about lowering that impact.
Right, and I think there's a tool. There's one tool that I saw, this EC3 tool that helps you as you're planning to build out of a space, an office or a building or whatever. You're calculating, you're adding the products you're going to get, and then it's giving you a sense of like if you're going to budget for a certain amount of carbon because you're going to buy some offsets for the inevitable carbon that's got to be used on some level, but you don't want to exceed that budget because that would blow project projections and things like that. There are tools now that you guys are a part of, right?
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit of that EC3 tool. And it's not just interface tool.
It's not an interface tool. Correct. Yeah. So the EC3 is another acronym. The world is so full of acronyms.
The hard part.
You're so brave to take on acronyms. So EC3 stands for Embodied Carbon in Construction Calculator.
Okay.
And Interface was involved. We helped fund the starting of the calculator. However, it has nothing to do with Interface's influence on it. It's actually a tool that uses third-party verified, publicly available EPDs, another fun acronym, Environmental Product Declarations, which are kind of a long format version of a nutrition label if you think about it in food. Unfortunately, they're 17 pages often instead of that cute little label. But what it's doing is taking that information and just making it more actionable. People are not going to sit down and read a 17-page document for the 10 carpet options that they're considering. It's just too much. So what this does is really synthesizes that information, takes that really critical part out. It's got a lot of awesome information in there, but what we're focusing on for this conversation is the global warming potential. So it takes that number out and just makes it comparable across different product categories, everything from concrete and steel, which are really heavy hitters on the structural side. And then shockingly, you wouldn't think of it, but carpet can actually be a really heavy hitter on the interior finish side. But it doesn't have to be. You just need to know the information and use it as part of your decision-making criteria. So that tool has made that possible. And the great thing is, even if it's kind of hard to navigate at first, you take that information with you to the next project. So you don't have to, look at what the lowest carbon carpet is or what the lowest carbon concrete is. You kind of know that and take it with you as knowledge for the next project. So we're really excited about people diving into this conversation, and especially having a tool available for this part of those supply chain emissions so that people can actually take action on them.
So it's interesting because sort of like, okay, you're the company, you're not the biggest company, but you're publicly traded, you have shareholders, you make quarterly reports about your likely, and I guess 2020 has not been a good year for everybody. So understandably that's a difficult thing for CEOs right now navigating, and to try to describe. I mean, not many people are in office spaces at the moment. They're trickling back. So our build outs so I'm sure that's a great pressure on a company like yours at the moment to deal with.
Absolutely.
But you've invested over the years, 20 years, in formalizing this process internally for your products. And then to get to this sort of carbon neutrality. But then you want to also compete on a fair footing, not equal, but fair, that everybody's measuring their competitive products or their competitive efforts in getting to carbon neutrality in the similar vein. How do you characterize that part of the business? Because at some point you want a standard, you want something that exists there, right?
Yep.
Is there a standard? Is there high confidence in these standards, or is there a lot more work to be done? And that's part of the E3 effort.
The EC3, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so there aren't a lot of standards. The thing that we really like about carbon accounting is that it's a single number of truth, right? Because there are a lot of different ways to really come into this conversation and to make up for a footprint that you may have. But what we're most interested in is that real number. You can take offsets from there, absolutely, to get to zero. However, it is most interesting to be able to compare the real number, and then offsets from there can get anybody to neutral, right? That's certainly an important part of the conversation. But what EC3 does, it does not account for offsets, so it shares the real number first. And that's what allows people to actually compare those numbers with competitive products so that they can make decisions, and then offsets can be a secondary consideration when they're comparing products.
All right, I got a little distracted by your.
That's okay. Sorry.
Your people helping. It's okay.
Yes.
Hold on, I'll just take a pause and maybe they can get the stuff they need, and then we'll make an edit here.
Yeah, let's do an edit. Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
Can you just not walk behind me as best you can? Because I'm doing a recording for work. Sorry, I thought you were coming at 12.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
Okay. Maybe we got the upstairs now, okay?
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Is that okay? Do you want to close the door to the closet though?
Yeah, I'll close it once she comes up.
Oh, when she comes up? Okay.
Yeah.
Right, cool.
Sorry about that. I thought they were coming at 12, but they're early.
Let's do that answer again.
Yeah, we will.
So just give me a second, and when you're ready, you
Yeah.
want to wait for her to come by,
Yeah.
and then okay.
Let me just wait for her to come up.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem.
start upstairs? Yeah, thank you. I'm just recording something for work. So if you just start upstairs,
Yeah.
I'll let you know when we're done.
All right.
Thank you.
I need somebody to come by and help us clean up our place because our place is a mess. Let me tell you. This disaster zone.
Yeah, we got a pandemic puppy too. So we've got the dog thing going on. We've got
Definitely want to hold on to get a good standard code. You're on an awesome roll, so
Sure.
you've clearly done this before. So
I try to keep it lively because we're talking about carbon after all.
It's like the most important thing that's just really hard for people to wrap around
Exactly.
their heads. So
Exactly. All right,
okay.
let me close this.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right, so we're gonna jump in back into this edit, and then you were starting to discuss about, is there a standard? Is there, how are we doing in that space?
Yeah, so the easiest way to think about it is carbon. There are plenty of standards to follow when you're figuring out a carbon footprint. So that is really important because that is kind of the single source of truth. It's an actual number that can be comparable when making decisions about products or a myriad of things. There isn't that much standardization around carbon offsets. So there's carbon removal, there's carbon offsets. That's kind of, I don't want to call it the wild, wild west because that makes it sound like it's not, it doesn't make sense to do it, and it absolutely does, but there need to be standards to follow. But you can't necessarily say that one carbon neutral product is the same as another carbon neutral product, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, we back to the categories, back to the earlier example, you could be designing under the brand, but if you're not also attaching that effort into the supply side, the suppliers, where you're sourcing it, or maybe where you're even manufacturing some of that, then the product doesn't actually reach that standard. How confident do you feel, don't name names, but of some of your collaborating competitors out there in their ability to actually accurately, like, do you guys look at each other and kind of go, yeah, you're not really there yet, and others kind of go, that guy definitely is doing the right job? I mean, is there something in there?
I think, let me speak nicely about our competitors. I think that everyone is trying to make progress.
Okay.
I think that the progress is different based on where you started. We started a very long time ago. Our carbon neutral claim is much more comprehensive than our competitors because it does go all the way to the supply chain, and it does include all of our products that we sell globally. And it does include the entire life cycle of the product. So we even purchase offsets for the use and maintenance of the product, which we're not responsible for. That happens after it leaves interface. So it's just more comprehensive, but there's nothing to say that the steps that they're taking aren't good. They are, but there's no standard for what carbon neutral means. You could say that you have, that you have carbon neutral manufacturing, but people don't understand that carbon neutral just manufacturing in that slice is different than the entire life cycle of the product for all products that a company would make. So it's just confusing for people, and they're all good things, but you just don't understand if one is the same as the other.
Right. And that's a key, that's a key component, because I think companies that are doing the right thing, like Interface, or have been doing, should be rewarded with the more attention. Like if I want to buy a product that's truly carbon neutral, I want to be able to make that easy comparison without having to go through all the marketing, all the discussions about how you, like, I just want to look at a logo. I just want to look at the thing. It's reached this gold standard. Check mark. Let's move on, because I don't have a whole lot of time. But I definitely don't want to see a bunch of everyone's saying they've claimed it, no one really checking fully to how far their claims are. Like that's got to be a challenge in a sense. How far along are we towards shaping that challenge from your perspective?
It's a hard question to answer. I mean, I think that we always are rewarded by customers of ours who really understand the difference, right? Who take the time, who are willing to dig into the details. And then those people are big influencers for others. Like we have, for example, a lot of designers at design firms who really like they crave more and more and more information. And then other designers will come to them and say, I don't want to think about it. Just tell me what to use. You know, we all have those in our lives. You know, I do it to my husband. Like, he's like, well, have you done the research on this thing that you're going to buy? I'm like, I know that you have, just tell me, you know what I mean? Like, for God's sake.
I trust you.
Yeah.
You just tell me what you want to pick and I'll move on with my
life. Exactly. So we're ahead. Is everyone ready for the conversation? No, but we're educating them and making them ready. We're running what we call Carbon Love and Learns, which is kind of a funny way to bring people along. They spend 5 days with us, an hour a day, but they spend 5 days with us learning about this topic from a myriad of different points of view. And they come out understanding more, and they understand, I think what's most important is, if I see a claim, what do I need to know? What questions do I need to ask about that claim to understand not just its validity? I'm sure that it's a valid claim, but what is the scope of the claim, and how might it be different than something else that I've heard? And that's just teaching people to be critical thinkers. We can't stop being critical thinkers and just rely on logos. And we're always going to rely on logos here and there. I do, you know, with organic, we're all guilty of it. But in the business space, we do have the luxury of a bit more time and thought that goes into decisions than the consumer world, quite honestly. You know, I'm grateful to be in the B2B world.
Gotcha. Right. Well, these are bigger deals. There's more you're going to have to spend some time anyway, figuring out the competitive advantages between one type of material flooring or one class of the products you have versus others. So you're already in it. And I think that if you are also able to secure 5 hours from people over the course of 5 days to talk about this topic, that kind of would, if you have a marketing perspective, that's kind of intriguing, because that means there are people that are dying for that information. So you're serving them with this robust process you've gone through, the learnings, the information. So there's a possible business win just in that area.
Exactly.
How have you, other than establishing the brand, you know, deeply connected with this process, how do you think you've done compared to like other flooring companies out in the world? And don't compare yourself to the largest. I'm talking within the class. Like, how do you feel you're able, like, is business growing from the perspective of like, I need to get LEED certified, you know, what's that like there?
Yeah, definitely there. And this is actually something that we have, I think, the pandemic to be thankful for.
What
is,
really? We have
I know. There, brace yourself. There's one thing.
What?
There's one thing. That's it. No, I mean, the consumer world has actually gone gangbusters. We even have some people, you know, on our board who have some companies who have just blown it out of the water during the pandemic. The B2B world has suffered, but what I do think is that of the people that are left, I hate to say it that way, but we've all really taken this moment to be like, okay, we need to reemerge building things in a better way than we have before. And how can we think about, you know, there isn't going to be a vaccine for climate change. That's not a thing. And we've all been pained during this pandemic by being stuck at home. And I think that it has really given people the time to think about, how can I make better decisions from where I sit? And where people sit are either the specifiers or the procurers in our world of a lot of stuff. So how can we think about, certainly how to buy less stuff, but then of the stuff that we're going to buy, how can we make the best possible decisions? And that's where this carbon footprint really gets tied, because there is a link back to public health. We can tie things like Lyme disease, things like asthma, exacerbations, and things like migration. We can tie them all to climate, and these affect people. So as we think how to make buildings part of the solution to reversing global warming instead of just less of the problem, there, number one, has been a much bigger focus on that as we emerge out of this pandemic. And number two, I'm super grateful that we made the investment and then kept the commitment and actually launched carbon storing carpet tile amid a pandemic. I mean, in October of last year, we launched carbon negative carpet tile, and a lot of our industry was just throwing low numbers at, what projects can we get by just throwing low prices at them. And we were talking about something so much bigger and more important, and something that had much of a longer term view. So I've been grateful that our salespeople have had something positive to talk about when we've been surrounded by just so much negativity. And I think that we're so well positioned to get, our rightful share moving forward in 2021 and beyond. So I'm super optimistic about it. And I'm glad that we've had something optimistic to focus on when, I haven't left my house. I used to travel 60 to 70% of the time. And I have a much tighter bond with my family now.
Yes.
We are so close. Yeah.
I think you touched on something that is, I don't have any particular data or studies, but I just gotta wonder, like, from a cultural perspective, I would say in the 90s, I think environmental concerns were always there for some people in our country. Certainly the people that are impacted by a negative catastrophe that was local. And I think in those 90s and the 80s, down all the way to the 50s, that environment was an issue, but it happened at a local area. The factory finally was discovered that they were spilling some chemical thing into the local stream, and a bunch of people got sick, or the other manufacturer was spewing toxic fumes. But you would get these stories and like, look what we're doing to the environment. But still, for the vast majority of everybody else in the country, you weren't affected by that, or there wasn't you're like, well, that sucks, but I'm glad I don't live there, and I got to get to work, and I got to go buy this thing, and I can't deal with that. So, and just people just moved on, right? But I think fast forward to where we are today, 2020, I think people are realizing, oh, wait a minute, it is all connected. There is we can keep targeting little spots, but there's more of those issues. And then there's wider spread impact of what all those little spots of causing environmental damage or negative impact is causing. Now you get what? We get California fires on a schedule. If you're in the business of selling fire suppressant products, you can schedule all your ad spend just before the fire season begins. Like, that's guaranteed. That's a pattern that's now there, and it's getting wider and bigger and more out of control. So your marketplace keeps getting bigger, and whatever. There's some issues there that people are now come to terms where I do need to care if in my community, or if in the products that I'm buying, or if whatever it is, the stocks I'm investing in are going into the companies that are trying to calculate and consider the carbon impact that's in these products. My question, the thing that I've been drawn to lately has been, has that driven more business? And you're giving me this answer that yes, it has. And certainly through a really tough time where I'm sure there was contraction in other lines of products, right? Other contracts that you've had. How do you see across the next 10 years, if you can put your sort of prognosticating lens, like, where do you think your company, your group, and I know that that's a CEO vision, but from where you are, if you were in charge, where do you think there's excitement for both your company and people that are other, your other collaborators in some of these other nonprofits?
Yeah, I think in the next 10 years, increasingly over those 10 years, you're going to want to be doing business with brands that get it. Right. And that's just kind of the short answer. Like, does this company get it or not? Because we're going to be seeing more and more effects, over these years. And science is telling us that it is not going to be enough to simply reduce carbon emissions. It's just not. So people are increasingly going to be looking for solutions that actually draw down carbon. And if you're not a part of that story, everyone is talking about reduction, right? That's table stakes at this point.
Right.
And one of the kind of breakthrough innovative pieces of what we're doing is, we're not a product where it doesn't matter what it looks like, where you can put it behind walls, or it can be part of something. We have a product that we have to sell based on aesthetics, in part. And if we can do that in our space, then others, it shows that it's possible for others to do it in other spaces. And we're starting to see that it's not enough for you to have part of your portfolio that offers this. People want choice. They want to be able to choose from anything that you make. It's not okay to have an eco line anymore. Oh, you care about the environment. Let me just have you look over here then. It's going to have to be this sea change. And people are just a lot more hip to understanding nuance, quite honestly, and seeing through eco marketing. And that's what makes it harder, honestly, for a company like ours, because you don't want to kill people with metrics, but you do want to get to a single source of truth. And I just think that is going to lead to more and more business over time, especially as we see these large corporations, healthcare systems, universities, putting a target metric on scope 3 emissions, which is not something that they control. It's how they buy. So you have to be a part of that.
Yeah, I think that is the key. Your big institutional buyers are feeling the pressure because they need to hire large employee bases. And how do they stand out if you're building the next hospital and you didn't really look to get it by investing in products that really have a sustainable component, like a real, not just the replacing the napkins with something like a reusable type of paperware, but like something more to it, all encompassing.
Yep.
Like, I think you're gonna be in a situation where it's just gonna hard to draw talent in there at such scale if you're not already putting that effort. And so those are your buyers. Those are your people that are going to buy from you. And they're like, great, I have an all-encompassing solution because the company's totally on board with this. We want to buy from you so that we could tell that story to our employees. Like, even the carpet is carbon, neutral or I don't even know what the term would be. Like, what's the
next? It would be carbon neutral or carbon negative.
Carbon negative.
Yeah.
So carbon negative is the next term to start paying attention.
Correct. Carbon negative, which really means carbon storing. So of the stuff that the thing is made of, more carbon has been stored in the materials than has been released into the atmosphere to make it. So think about, like in your example, because yes, we want to be able to tell people that we're hiring and the war on talent and things like that. Those stories are important. But think about, like, if you're a healthcare system. Healthcare Without Harm is an organization who did a study on healthcare's impact on the climate. So 71% of healthcare's carbon impact comes from the supply chain. So if climate change, not if, but it does, climate change has an impact on human health. So how can you, as a healthcare system, not be taking responsibility for your supply chain emissions and trying to lower them if they're affecting the community that you serve, right? People are coming into your hospital because of symptoms that are related to climate change effects.
Right.
So
Asthma,
it's,
particulates.
yeah, like
the
all of it.
above.
Yeah. Respiratory. So if respiratory symptoms are depressed because of climate change, then something like COVID comes in and affects more people because of a depressed, immune system from a respiratory perspective. So there are these ties that you could say that's just on healthcare, but it's also on what is the corporation? What are they doing to take care of the public health of people before they come into their buildings? And that is through decisions that they make through procurement. So all of these things we've known, that it's all interconnected. If I said, is it all interconnected? You'd say, of course it is.
Sure.
But we are starting to see systems be put in place to actually take responsibility for what we know is interconnected. We just haven't put all of those pieces together. And those pieces are starting to be put together. And that is how companies are going to be rewarded for having leadership in this area.
And I guess we have two potential factors that are the future that brings the pressure if we don't, right? We have regulatory pressure that's likely to keep coming. And then we have behind that, we will have climate change pressure that will definitely, it has already created regulatory pressures to deal with it. And I think, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years in the company that you're in? Like, where do you guys think, or the 20, obviously getting to carbon negative, but what would you like to see happen? What is sort of these capstone projects you're aiming towards?
I would honestly, I think that we're on a great trajectory in the building industry towards, having these tools and taking the action because the tools are available. I think we already see legislation in the state of California around, for public money, you have to have first transparency of the carbon footprint of what you're going to spend public money on, and then increasing pressure on not exceeding certain carbon footprint thresholds for certain materials. So that is starting. I actually want to see it in more industries than just building. We've got a long way to go in building. I think we can do that in 10 years, but we need to start seeing some progress in food, in all of the stuff that we buy that makes up that scope 3. We need industries to apply for grants or to take on the work themselves and learn from what has been done with the EC3 tool for the building industry and scale that to other industries, transportation, food, etc., so that someone can just go in and compare products based on embodied carbon and operational carbon, of course. It all depends on the product. A car, operational carbon matters a lot more. For our industry, the embodied carbon matters a lot more because when we're dealing with a 10-year time frame, the stuff that's happening in that 10 years matters the most right now. There's a time value on that carbon. You can't reduce it later. So yeah, I think just to more industries.
And shoot, there like went the hour. It just went flying by, Lisa. Thank you.
Sorry.
I can't thank you so much
for
giving us just a window into this. And I guess what's the best way, if there's an association staff member that would like to just learn a little bit more about the coordination efforts that you're involved in, because you're on several boards, right? Too.
I am, yeah. So I'm involved with the Center for the Business of Sustainability at Penn State's Smeal College of Business. If you're a corporation that would like to become a member and get some more information, that is possible. We're also a founding member of Materials Can, which is the Materials Carbon Action Network. And that specifically provides information on the built environment specifically. So provides awareness and education. And that is one of the programs of Building Transparency. So buildingtransparency.org. I'm a board member there, and that's where the EC3 tool lives. Materials Can is a program there, and we're starting additional programs there as well. So just a few places to start.
And that's a good spot to find you, or if somebody would like to contact you. Certainly the consumer We should pitch that. I'm gonna
Oh,
go
yeah.
pick that right.
Floor.com. So if you're a consumer out there and you're looking for modular rugs for your home that are made of 100% recycled content nylon and are carbon neutral and can be returned when you're done with them to be turned into new carpet tile, then you can go to floor.com. Interface is just interface.com. That's the business to business. And yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Lisa Conway.
That might be the best way. Lisa,
sure.
Thank you again. I really appreciate this. I just tuning into the story. It's really impressive to know that there are companies, publicly traded companies, that are on this trajectory and that have gone so far and so deep, not just trying to just say we've reduced a certain amount, which by just replacing light bulbs or whatever in our offices,
right.
But that you really are going through the whole process. So I'm definitely going to watch you guys. Your stock is tile, and I added that to my watch list.
Good.
I like where the price is at now. I think it's going to go up. Given
it's a good time. Yeah, get in now. Get in now.
Get in now.
That's
Thank
right.
you so much, Lisa.
For more episodes of Through the Noise, go to throughthenoise.us.